I'm Greg Garbos of Four Season Tools. We're here on North Haven Island at Turner Farm off the coast of Maine. What we're talking about today is how to build sidewalls for high tunnels that are on tracks but with no sidewall ventilation. This one also has a sidewall door, which complicates things slightly. When there's no sidewall ventilation on a movable tunnel, instead of having a wooden baseboard, what we have is a metal baseboard, which is a double plastic attachment channel. Since we have a track tunnel right here, we have a purlin on the inside of the structure. We also over here have a sidewall door. This is a V-track tunnel, so we have all of our V-track rollers facing in. So when we assemble the sidewall, there's several different steps to make this all work properly. The first thing that we did is we took all of our sidewall hoops and we installed our V-track rollers. The rollers come with a bolt that we removed, and we replaced it with a 1/2 inch by 6 inch hex bolt. When we put this on, we made sure to put a washer on the inside and on the outside of the sidewall hoop. We also put the grease fitting on the inside of the structure so that we can easily grease the rollers once the structure is installed. When we measured the location of our metal baseboard and of our sidewall purlin, we measured both of those before we started putting everything together. So we measured up from the bottom of our sidewall hoop, and we put a mark on the outside of 6 inches, which is the bottom edge of the metal baseboard, and then we measured up for our sidewall purlin. We put a mark at 30 inches on the inside of the sidewall hoop. So now our rollers are on our sidewall hoop, and we've got a mark for our metal baseboard, and we've got a mark for our sidewall purlin. After we have that all together, the one other thing that we did with our sidewall hoops, and you only need to do this if you have a sidewall door, is we drilled an additional hole for an anchor bolt. When you have a sidewall door, all the anchoring, the sidewall corner braces, your metal baseboards, and your purlins all shift over by 6 feet. So instead of having a situation where we only get one anchor point into our sidewall hoop, not at the second hoop in, but the third hoop in on this sidewall, we end up with 2 forged eye bolts, one facing in either direction, so we drilled another hole right here. So that completed everything with the sidewall hoops. While we were putting it together, we did put in all the forged eye bolts for the sidewall anchors. On the end wall, or in this case the last sidewall hoop for the sidewall door, we don't use a forged eye bolt because it'll stick out on the far side. So here we use a 2 3/8 inch brace band, and we put that up 3 feet from the bottom. So we've got a brace band here at hoop 2, and we've got forged eye bolts on all the rest of the hoops facing in towards the different anchor points. We found it really easy on this particular tunnel is to go ahead and install our sidewall door into both of our hoops before we started building our sidewalls. When we did that, we had to be very careful to make sure that all of our brace bands were already properly located before we put our door frame into our sidewall hoops. The door has to be open in order to attach this to the door frame. So what we did is we stood it all up, opened the door, and then screwed in through the large holes in the door frame to attach it to the sidewall hoops. We use number 14 self-tapping screws, the bigger of the self-tapping screws, to screw these pieces together. So when we tried to figure out all of our brace bands, out here on the end wall hoop, we made sure to have one brace band for where our end wall attaches to the sidewall hoop, and then we have another brace band which will end up sliding up onto our roof hoop when we install our roof corner braces. So over here, because of this end wall design, we only had 2 brace bands. On the second hoop in, we had several more brace bands. We had 2 for our double plastic attachment channel or our metal baseboard. We had 2 for our purlin end, where our sidewall purlin attaches to the hoop. We had the brace band for where our anchor point goes at 36 inches up from the bottom. And we also have another brace band which will end up sliding up, and that'll catch our sidewall corner brace. Now that we have this assembly done, we can finally start putting the rest of the frame together. We'll show you on the other side some of the sidewall that's in process. When we put this together, what we did is we put all of our spacer boards in to get our sidewall purlin exactly where we wanted to, and then we went ahead and installed our sidewall purlin with this 2 3/8 by 1 3/8 cross connector. We use these carriage bolts, and we have them always facing down. This is a structural component. We don't want people hanging something from it. It's a 1/4 inch bolt, so we snugged all those down with a 7/16 inch socket. Our sidewall corner braces came all the way from here. We snugged it up to the bottom of our metal baseboard, and we went ahead and we put in our sidewall corner brace with 2 spacer boards to make sure that it was in the right spot. We snugged down the brace band bolts there with a 1/2 inch deep socket, and we put this one in. There's also a brace band right here where the next sidewall corner brace will connect from this hoop all the way up to the other side. So if we go over here, I can show you in process where we're at. So we started by building with the inside of the tunnel up. We've got our sidewall door in place right here on the ground. We've got all the brace bands that we need already assembled. The next thing we did was we started laying out our spacer boards before we attached anything. We put our purlin end into our purlin and immediately put a screw into the two pieces so that they didn't come in and out with respect to each other. We put our spacer boards down on the top and the bottom, and we went ahead, secured this in place, then put in our first cross connector. We came over to the next set, we put two spacer boards in, we attached our sidewall purlin on both sides and put in our sidewall corner brace. We continued that process, two spacer boards. Every time we needed to, we added a new purlin and put it in place all the way to the other end. As we're going, we also want to make sure not only that our spacing is correct by having a spacer board at the top and a spacer board at the bottom, we also need to make sure that our rollers are properly pivoted with respect to each other. So when it goes down the track, all the rollers are straight. There's a couple different ways to do this. What we did here is we took a long pipe and we went ahead and we ran it from several of our sidewall hoops. If that pipe is flush against the rollers and the rollers aren't twisted with respect to the pipe, we know that this roller and that roller are straight with respect to each other. If you're on concrete or perfectly level ground, you can put a level on each roller to make sure that you have it exactly where you want it. Another method is to go ahead and measure from the bolt axle of one of the rollers to the next one, and if you have that perfect spacing and you're on flat ground between all the rollers, then you know everything is exactly where you want it. When we come down to the end and we do our last two sidewall hoops, it complicates things just a little bit because we have a purlin pipe that comes on this end of the swaged end, and we've got our purlin end, which will bring down to our 30-inch mark on our last sidewall hoop. So once we have everything in place, we got our spacer boards exactly where we want them, we'll go ahead and we'll measure from this point to another point, or just put the purlin pipe in and mark it. We'll go ahead and cut that to fit. Then once we have this entire thing done, what we'll do is we'll lift this whole wall up, flip it over, slide it back into place, and then we'll work on everything that we can do from the other side. We're continuing to build this sidewall for a track tunnel with no sidewall ventilation. This one also has a sidewall door. So we put the purlin on when it was underneath, then we went ahead and we flipped the entire sidewall. The next piece that we're going to put on is the double plastic attachment channel. This will act as our metal hip board. So since there's no sidewall ventilation, the roof plastic will come all the way down and go into the top channel of this double plastic attachment channel. The bottom channel will be used for a flap that'll make up the gap between the metal hip board and the ground. When we put this in, we attach it slightly differently at our seams than we do where it just hits the hoop. So everywhere where it hits the hoop, we have two self-tapping screws that are screwed into the sidewall hoop. And then when we have seams, we try to make sure that our seams end right into the sidewall hoop, and then we put self-tapping screws in all the spots in the seams. If you've got big gaps in your seams, you can use a splice plate right there. So when we build this, we've got to make sure we maintain our 6-foot spacing. So we're putting our spacer boards in as we go. We also want to make sure that we're keeping things at a right angle. So we use one of our right angle squares. The other really important part is that there's a bolt that goes in the back side of this plastic attachment channel. We have to slide that bolt in before we secure it to our sidewall hoops. That'll allow us, once we flip it over again, to put a pipe strap on the back of this to ensure that we have a nice strong connection of our double plastic attachment channel to our sidewall hoops. Where the double plastic attachment channel hits the last hoop on the end, in this case where the door is, and on the far side at the end wall, what we do is we drill 2 holes in our double plastic attachment channel, and then we use the brace bands and we sleeve this in. We're going to bend this back into place, but we did have to open it up to get our bolts in. Now that we have this done, we'll flip it over and continue building it from the other side by putting on the pipe straps.